This episode, the Handyman pros discuss what they've been doing lately, a deep dive into what John and Larry do on a daily basis. Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation. This edition is entitled, What We Do. To help me explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy, John. John, what's been going on this week?
What hasn't been going on this week? Greetings, Larry.
It was kind of the genesis of this topic, right?
I'm awake. It is. It's almost the. I'm kind of excited. Actually, it's almost a weekend here, and as we speak, and I'm just got to get some downtime. Although I got to hang a light in a new chandelier in my own house that my wife bought, and it's another thing. But it's been kind of going nonstop. Now I know that you've been blown and going here because your rental homes and things like that. So that one's on you. I mean, you've been really working.
Well, it's a little
24/7. It seems like.
It's a little bit of a combination of both. We've acquired one more rental house that we're doing a pretty major renovation on. But some of the other things is, I hate to say this and not to blame COVID, but COVID has really ticked business up, at least in my side. I think kind of what's going on is people are there. Of course, everybody's at home, and so all of a sudden they're at home. They're not traveling. Vacations are being curtailed, and I think people are like, if we're not going to travel, we're going to fix everything in the house that we haven't fixed in the past 25 years, And so I know I have, John. I know you've been busy too. But I've definitely seen a huge uptick in business since about 3 or 4 weeks after COVID started. Really like beyond normal.
And I agree. There's all the other trades that I've been talking to. You name it, they're all going crazy right now. They're all busy as all get out. So this is something that's happening all over. At least here where we're at. I'm sure it's happening everywhere. But all the guys, everybody's just going. So I'm sure there's guys out there. I'm on this show. I'm probably going to complain about working my short hours. Because I'm hey, I'm retired, but and I just don't want to work that hard. But I know some of the guys in the trades, they're probably working their 60, 80 hours a week,
If they want to, they are.
If they want to, but that's the nature of what's going on right now. So I'm tired. I'm happy today. I'm just I'm just like, man, it's just one thing after another. So
and this is when we came up with the idea for this show, folks. This was just kind of one of those things. Like we talk about, we kind of laugh. We wanted to tell some stories, but we also wanted to have you have an insight into what we do on a daily, weekly basis, and kind of how our world goes as handymen, because everybody thinks, well, I don't know what people think, but the perception is, a handyman isn't that, it's not that difficult a job or whatever. I'm not sure that that's what people think, but our skill sets are such that it's just really interesting to do the work that we do. And you do hear us say we're tired, and we're tired a lot. I think a lot of that has to do with both John and I are a little bit older. And we laugh and we kind of chide about not doing flooring and, being on our hands and knees. Cause as John, being on your hands and knees all day it's pretty tough.
It's brutal. And it's kind of funny. I just find myself, doing some of these little jobs. I'm like, do I need my knee pads right now? I'm like, yeah, no. And then pretty soon it's like, man, I'm just, it's like I'm either going to do this all day, every day, or I'm not going to do it at all. Cause it's, it's like going back and working out again, you get sore from doing some repetitive things, that you haven't done in a while. It's like, man, I never knew that muscle existed. It's kind of like, holy mackerel, or that tendon or whatever.
I have plantar fasciitis really badly right now, and I am struggling with trying to get my plantars under control. I'm actually taking, I do aspirin and stuff like that, and I'm doing the stretches and I'm doing all that stuff, and it is getting better. But boy, it's rough.
So you got off the meth.
I got off the meth. Bare aspirin is helping me out tremendously. I've got to tell you, I'm one of their best clients at this point. But yeah, it's just kind of the thing, we like we were talking about, we wanted to sort of tell you about, what we do, and any different day, any given day, I don't know how it works for you, John, but any given day is like this. I call it the voyage of discovery. What am I going to find today that I didn't expect? Right.
And it's one of those things where, we've been like we've been just been talking about. We've been working a lot, so it's out the it's at the job at it, just like some of the other trades. It's at the job at the 7:30, 8 o'clock, and trying to knock it out by 5, 6 on some of these things. Now, generally, I don't like to do that, but but that's what happens. To your point, Larry, is and folks out there, it's. When we're doing some of the things, it is a voyage of discovery. When we take apart somebody's window, and it looks rotted, it could be really rotted.
Yeah, it can be.
And Larry and I were on a job where we took apart a great big window, and it was really rotted.
It was actually amazing. The window was still in the frame. It was that rotted.
It was that bad, and. So, it's one of those things where you think a job is it's gonna take you maybe 3 or 4 hours to do, and it winds up a solid whole day.
Yeah, or
more.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, would you say that's one of your big challenges, John? Is estimating time on a job?
Well, that kind of rolls into it, doesn't it? So people will ask me, for the folks out there in the audience, and some of you might be handymen, some of you might be hiring people or doing stuff yourself, and you'll find this out is, the hardest thing is when you look at a project, especially something is not revealed. You look at it and you say, what's behind that? Now, this is, you make the distinction between repairing and creating something new, because when you create something new, you kind of know what's there, but what's behind it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But when you get called in on, hey, my floor doesn't seem right in front of my shower, and you start digging around and you find out that the flooring's gone, that the subfloor is gone, that the joist is gone, that it keeps going and going. That's what Larry, I think that's what you're talking about, is the challenge of trying to estimate what these jobs can be.
Yeah, and it's a lot of that, and it's also if a handyman or a contractor says to you something along the lines, I really can't estimate that, or I just don't know. I know, me personally, I always kind of hedge those bets, right? So I'm doing a bath. I'm just going to tell a quick story. So there's a couple stories here that are going to come out of this same bathtub. So a friend of mine calls me. He's got a bathtub that's actually leaking. Now his house is on a slab. I'm like, okay, so where's the water going? He says, it's running up underneath the drywall into my closet. I'm like, okay. I said, is the tub cracked? He sends me a picture. Sure enough, there's a great big crack in the tub. It's a 20-year-old fiberglass bathtub. Okay, no big surprise. This is a replacement of the tub, right? So I go over to get measurements and stuff because I want to make sure that I am dealing with a standard size tub. This happened to be a garden tub, so it's a little bit bigger. It's not exactly, standard anymore. We'll call it anymore. It's not a 30 or 32 by 60 inch tub is what it's not. So I'm also want to see, like, he's got tile up there, and I want to see what the walls compose of and things like that. So I go over and I look at this thing, and he's asked me, so what do you think it's going to cost? And I said, well, here's the deal. Okay, I don't know. Like, number one, I started asking him questions. I said, so how long has this been leaking? And he couldn't pin it down to a date, right? So he goes, well, I think it's been a couple
Yeah,
of months.
nobody really knows how long something's been leaking, because by the time you figure that out, it's like,
Too late.
it's leaking.
Yeah.
It's leaking.
So it could be too late, So and that's one of those things that and you and I see this all the time. Yeah. We see these, well, it's just a drip. Well, it's just a drip 24 hours a day, 7 days a week over however many years you've been letting it drip, right? And what does that do? Well, in this case, he was really lucky. He told me he thought it was only 4 or 5 months. So I pull the tub out, and the whole long story is, this is another story. Folks, know where your water shutoffs are? Because I had to go to the street to shut this one off, because I still haven't been able to find his water shutoff that's in his house. I think he covered it up with some paneling. Not a good idea, by the way, to cover up your water shutoffs to your house, because if he were to have a sink leak or any supply line leak right now, from his house down to his street is about 100 yards. Maybe not. That's probably 100 yards. It's a long way. There would be many tens of maybe hundreds of gallons of water on his floor by the time he got to the shutoff. Yeah. If he could make the shutoff even work. It took me an hour to get the water shut off because of the way the valve was, and it was all bound up because it hadn't been turned off in years. Anyway, that's I'm telling a different story. So anyway, I pull his tub out, and luckily for him, really luckily, there was no wood rot damage. Now, the drywall was shot. It was wet. It was gone. It all came down. One of the funny things is, underneath the tub, John, I told you this right before the show, but I want to just tell the world. Mm-hmm. I get under there, and I look in there, and I go, what is that? What is that in his drain down, wrapped around the drain? I pull it out. It's a snake skin, and I'm telling you, it's not a small snake skin. It was like a 3-inch diameter snake. And I'm
one of them found a good place to shed its skin.
To take a shed.
How wonderful. How wonderful there.
So these are what I call the voyages of discovery. Like we open that up. And fortunately, in this case, this didn't adversely affect him now. And you had said it before, and I know I've done the same thing. Somebody says, "Oh, I just need a little drywall repaired because it's wet," and you open it up, and the sill plate to the window is completely rotten and gone. And it goes from a very, very what seems to be a very simple repair to an extremely complex repair. Extremely complex repair.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the challenges, and that's and I think just from the challenge also is to explain to people that this is what happens, and this is a challenge for them. This is a challenge for them too, because these things start to unveil themselves to be a real problem. And now you and I haven't come across anything yet that we'd really have to stop and say, this is way over our head. You know what I mean?
Couple of electrical problems in that side where I've had to stop and say, you need an electrician for this.
Okay.
Licensed electrician.
You did. Okay.
Yeah. Because I am not a licensed electrician.
Yeah. Right. So those kind of things. Yeah. And we haven't had any, big time foundation stuff as of yet, but some of it has been getting pretty close to where it's like I'm not that, I can do a lot of things. I've got a lot of I have got a lot of knowledge about these things, and but I'm not that guy. I'm not that company that does some very specific things.
We've both had both roofing and high, and we'll call it like high work issues, meaning, John, we've said it several times on the show, but we don't do high work. We don't go up more than about 20 to 25 feet in my case. I don't go higher than that. And I don't do steep pitch roofs, and I don't do anything like that.
No.
And that's all stuff that's just out of our comfort zone, so we're not going to, I'm not doing it. That's when they need to hire somebody that's young and really knows how to do that. Certain people have different levels of comfort. But the part, I think, we want to go back to circling back that part of the reason that part of the reason for this show, John, right, is that we wanted to help educate people to understand about some of these little maintenance items that they don't really, they don't think it's a big deal. and yet at the same time it can develop into a big deal, right? And you and I, we talk about water intrusion all the time and things like that, and this is all born of our experience. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Rotted fascia and stuff, and gutters that are clogged that cause huge problems. And it's so simple to fix in advance, and again, save you time, money, and aggravation. You either can clean your gutters out once a year, or you can let them go and let the water overrun and run in your soffit and ruin your foundation and do all the other things that can go along with that. And granted, folks, that doesn't happen every single time, but it can. And, you know, and then now you've got a major expense and a major problem where you could have just taken care of it with a little bit of maintenance, right, John? Isn't that part of the reason why we developed this show?
Yeah. And for, once again, Larry and I, we call each other, like in the mornings. And honestly, a lot of times, I've got my ear to the track on some of these bigger jobs that, I'm going to need help on, or you might ask me to do some things too. And, so we kind of sync up that way every morning of what's going on, where we're going, what we're doing. Because, I've found some bigger jobs that, there's no way that I was going to do it by myself. No, there's no way.
And that was, folks, to give you perspective, that's how John and I we've known each other outside of this, but John came to me a long time ago and said, tell me about this handyman business that you're doing. He was getting ready to retire from his software job, and he didn't want to sit around the house and do everything all day, so he wanted to know about what I was doing. And we got to talking, and it ended up where he got into the business himself, and now we work together we work especially on bigger jobs, but we work as a mutual support group too, because there's just things where it gets back to kind of like lessons learned, John, right? So like we're out there and we kind of laugh about some of this stuff like big snakeskins, but we tell stories to each other about, the various things that went on during our day. And we do learn from those lessons, right? I mean, we learn things on a daily basis about just a lot of the ideas for some of these shows come from those things that we actually are out there in the field. We see them and we just scratch our head and go, why? Just This is so simple, right? Just don't do this, or do this, or whatever. So that's one of those other things. I wanted to mention too, just, one of the other things that lends to cost for us is just supply side, right? So having to get stuff, right? John, do you ever get in and out of Home Depot fast or Lowe's or any of the big box stores?
I think we hit that one before one time, and I'll say it again, is that you can really get trapped inside, Home Depot or a Lowe's or a big box store, whatever you want to call them. Just walking around, just loading up lumber, and then you wind up, on the other side of the stores, the screws.
No.
And you'd be Larry, really?
Or you end up loading a dishwasher up.
A washing machine. Aisle 3, you get your thresholds on aisle 3 in Lowe's. Don't doubt me, folks. I got this one down. And it's just one of those things where, it's tough to get in and out in a short, because it's a big store.
Yeah,
it's a big store. And, every minute that you're in there is one less minute that you're on the job working. Now, as homeowners and things, and me too included, I love to just kind of walk around in there, But when I'm doing a job, I'm like, hey, get out of my way. I want to, here's my credit card. Get me out of here.
Yeah, I want out of here, right? The last thing you want to be done is being stuck behind the guy who wants to argue about the price of his, bolt.
Right.
And it's like, oh, geez, really, dude? Like, come on, dude, I got a job. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, right. Where they're scanning one screw at a time or something.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's another part of the challenge. And I will say that what helps folks is that, if you do hire handymen, or if you are a handyman out there, one of the things that I found that helps me it helps me, and I know it helps you, Larry, is when the customers send you a picture of what they
very much so. Yeah.
Send all the pictures you can of in various, just send as many as you can from all the angles, because that gives me a great idea of what I'm about to, what to prepare for. Because there might be things where I have to go buy something very specific.
Yeah, very much so.
And I want to be, and I want to do that before I get there, because of just what you said is, going into the store. So I think that's one of the things that I really like, is when people will send me some detailed pictures of their project. It's nothing earth shattering, it's not rocket science, but it is something to prepare for. Because the last thing you want to do is you want to show up and then go, I don't really, because as handymen, we do a lot of different things. We just don't do one thing. Like, you call a plumber. Well, he's got just about everything for plumbing in his truck, but he's not going to be the guy to put in your, a new electrical switch.
Right.
So that's kind of the same thing. So
or do your drywall.
Swiss Army. We're kind of like a Swiss Army knife. I always think of it like a Swiss Army knife. I've got a lot of different things, but not in a whole lot of quantities, so that I can generally have what I need, and I've gotten pretty good at it. And but I think that's one of the other challenges, is just to show up and not have the right thing. So the pictures really help.
Yeah, they really do. And one of the other things that we always tend to find too is that, at least I find it with my customers, and I love my customers, but I always try to allot way more time than I think it's going to take the job, because inevitably what happens with my customers, and it doesn't matter which customer, and again, I'm not picking on my customers, but they're walking around the house, and some of my customers are really, really organized people, and so they have lists, they have an actual list, right? But even with my people that come with the list, they're, hey, I just thought of this. Can you do this while you're here? And 9 out of 10 times I actually can. So one of my challenges, that's where my time management, it's not time management, it's project management. It's getting the jobs done.
No, that's, right. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's and when I get an ad, I'm not going to turn it down, because to drive away, unless it's really, really, really late in the day, which is would have to be like after 7 p.m. I'm not going to turn it down, because I don't want to drive and come back to do, whatever. I mean, sometimes it's as simple things like, hey, could you hang this picture for me? And fortunately, in most cases, I have all my picture hanging stuff is in the truck, so I can do that for people. But inevitably, probably I would say probably good 80% of all the jobs I do, there's always an add-on or two. In my case, that's what happens. And it's all little stuff, and it's not, and again, I'm not complaining, but it just really, it's hard. Like, I generally don't schedule 2 appointments in a day, because I just find it never works very well for me. To have one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Occasionally, if it's really, really simple, and even then, sometimes what seems to be really, really simple is not.
Yeah, nothing's. I catch myself saying that all the time to my own self, is like, nothing's easy.
Yeah, it's not, and it's not that it's hard. Easy. It's just never as simple as you think. I just want to
hang this picture up. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, the picture's 14 feet in the air. Oh my God.
Right.
Yeah. Which means I need the ladder. It means I need this. It needs that. Oh, and by the way, it weighs 56 pounds.
Exactly.
So, what's your typical week look like, John? I mean, I'm just curious. I know what it does, but tell our audience.
If I can book for the days and things like that, I love to have a schedule. Okay. I'm just kind of that guy. I've always been kind of the guy that has, kind of lived off of a schedule, and sometimes just catch when catch can. I'll do that at times when people call me, and if I do have an open day, I can get in there. But my typical week, I'll generally try to keep a day. Now I'm different, I'm retired, and I'm just I just don't want to work all that hard, because this is hard.
You're lazy, John. You're lazy. Just say it, lazy. Yeah,
a layabout, and it's like there's some hard work here, and so generally I try to keep a day open a week just for my office work, because as we've talked about before, is that things in this business can get away from you in terms of your accounting and all kinds of other things. So I try to schedule a day that I'm open,
Yeah, even just
And
returning phone calls can be difficult.
and
Can't
just
it?
returning
Yeah.
phone calls can be and then you and I tried to schedule time, like right now to do the show too. So but otherwise I try to stay busy. And do I work 8 hours a day? No, I don't try to work a full day or 10 hours a day. I know that you do. um, but I generally just like to, I did this for a reason. I'm doing this for a reason. I'm doing it for a lifestyle reason. So, some of you guys out there that might be doing this kind of work, I mean, it's a great gig to have. But for me, I try to, I like making my own hours, spend with my family and that kind of thing. So, I try to book every day though, Larry, if I can, and then I try to leave that one day open. And then on my weekends off, I, do my stuff for myself,
So
at the house here, or, stay, hang around with the family and friends.
I'm just going to relate my experiences. So I book, I do the same thing. I book out, and I actually leave a day. I leave at least a day open a week, because inevitably, right, every single week, it's not that I want the time off, it's that I have overruns. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My jobs run over.
Right.
And every single week. So I only book 4 days a week, and sometimes only 3.5, depending on the scope of the projects, because I've just learned this from experience. It never fails. If I book 3.5 days, I'm working 5.5 days as it is. That just seems to be what happens with me. Because my job, again, it's just like kind of some of the things we talked about. We get a little bit of an add-on here, or we run into a challenge, we run into something we didn't expect, and it just runs over. It just stuff runs over. So that's part of, how I do it. And yeah, I tend to work long days, but that's just, that comes from me being the old vending man. I have a hard time not working. Somebody asked me to say, can't you retire? I said, yeah, I can retire. What would I do? I mean, I'm so used. My whole life has been just, I don't want to say hard driven, but I like to work. I actually like what I do. I like this job. I like the finished result, and I like making people happy. And as a result of that, I try to do an excellent job and make it look exactly the way the customer wants it. And that requires extra time than what the average guy does in my world. And I know you do the same thing, John.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I'll also add that part of the week, and it might occur on a Sunday morning or a Sunday afternoon, depending, or some part of the weekend. I try to cut out a couple of hours for education purposes.
Yes, very much.
And
so. Yep.
And I'll watch either some videos, or I'll be reading. I'll try to catch up on things. Because I challenge myself. Hey man, what do you know about this particular code, or this, how to do this or that, that kind of thing. And I can always do things better. I'm always trying to improve. So I cut out a lot of time to do some self education on in this thing, and it really pays off, because as you and I we're kind of more of the solution specialist type of people than we are just an installer.
Right.
That's not who we are. We're gonna get to the root of problems, and we're gonna fix it.
Yeah, I always say I'm a root cause guy. I want to stop the root cause, right? I can fix it, but I want to know why it's happening, so I can stop that.
Right.
So that
exactly.
it really fixes it, right?
Exactly. And I've gotten really good at some things over the time, because I've really put in some hours into certain skill sets. So that's kind of my week,
Right. And I just want to touch on your education thing, because of you, I have started the same process. And I think the things that it's made me better at some of my core competencies. The things that I thought I was really good at, I've learned even more tips to make me better, as it were. Because it's all about getting better. And then one of the other, probably the biggest things in the education thing that's come from being associated with John is the fact that you've opened my eyes to a lot of new products that are out there that, in the industry, right? I mean, in the construction industry in general, it's kind of like, well, we've been doing it this way forever, right? And technology marches on. Well, some of these things also have to do with there's actually new materials out there that are almost game changers for certain aspects of the business.
Isn't that
right?
the truth?
Yeah, and the thing is that if you just work all the time, right? If you're just out there doing the job, you'll never find out about those things. But if you spend some time and you do a little research and you're just like you just said, and I do the same thing, it's like, hey, I've never learned about X, and you go to
Right.
Uncle Google and you type in X, and it's amazing what comes up and what you learn. Like one of the things, and I'm just going to use a good example, John. You were telling me about an insulated stud, right? And I went and did that research, and folks, there's technology out there now, and we're not going to delve into this, but there's technology out there where it actually, they're talking about making a house super energy efficient, and about how your studs actually are a place of energy loss because it's solid wood. Well, somebody's come up with this engineered stud now that's like got a, what's it like an R factor of 30 or something. Anyway, it was
Some crazy
It
thing.
was crazy, and I'm like, that is unbelievable, and there's so many examples of that are just things that are really changing the way the construction industry is done, and the way that we repair things now. That it's just, you have to learn about it. You have to continually
it is incredible.
learn. Yeah,
it is incredible at the speed some of this stuff. It put it this way, it surprised me. This part of me has always done that, because I was in the computer software business for the last 30 years or so, and things, as everybody knows in that business, things were changing like crazy, month over month. And, to keep up with it can be a real whirlwind, and you got to keep up with it to be competitive. It's a competitive advantage to be up on the technology. And that's kind of what always drove me. And when I started to dig into construction, I thought, here, put up a bunch of studs, wood's wood, put down the floor. That's been going on for the last 100 years. Well, man, no, not even close.
Not even close.
There is all kinds of little things now that is just unbelievable, and at the speed things are moving, it surprised me. So I kind of fascinated with it, and I like to keep up on it. Some of it I use, some of it I don't, but it's just kind of what I do now, and it's great to have that kind of knowledge base.
Yeah, and it actually helps us. It helps me with that. Back to, you said solution specialist, which is actually what's on my card.
Yeah.
It really does. Sometimes it's like taking some of the things that you see, so you learn about this new product, and you actually can apply the same principle to something else, or you can use one product for a different application because it actually will work perfectly in that situation. It's just nobody's ever touted it that way, if you want to call it that, right? So nobody's actually put it out there that way and said, would this work? And you try it, and it works fabulously. I'm going to use one of the examples. We talk about PVC wood all the time. Yes, it's got great applications, and it's great for water resistance. There's places where it doesn't work. It's not really that structural, so you really don't want to hang anything too heavy on it, a door or anything like that. You wouldn't want to do it. But for a lot of applications to work, well, I've now found I take PVC and I use it for a lot of other things, just where I'm using filler, where I need a waterproof filler. And it's like, well, this works great. It's plastic. I know it's not going to rot. I don't ever have to worry about it. It's just a fabulous way of taking one piece of technology and applying it to something else and staying up with it, and it keeps you current, and it solves those problems better than you could have come up with together.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we've done shows on specific products and things like that for specific uses, and I think that takes me back to the old days of being an aircraft mechanic. Before I got into the software business, is that you got to be real careful what you're doing because you got one shot at it here. You're not going to wind up pulling over onto the side of the road because your brakes went. Something happened with your brakes. In that business, it was tragedy.
Go
happens.
with what we know. That's right.
Yeah. So it always taught me that you really need to think before you act, and really know what how things get put together, and they get put together the right way. And I know you're the same way. you don't want to do this before that, or so all kinds of things. We don't have to talk about that, but that's kind of what I always look at when I go out to do a job, is to make sure it gets done right the first time, and with the right products, and the new products. If there are some things I can use to substitute for some of the old stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So. All right. Well, is there anything else, John, that we wanted to just discuss on our, what we do, like when we go out to do a job or anything? Is there any other, kind of just, I don't know, tips, tricks, or anything that when we discuss this stuff? We have any good stories besides my snakeskin story, which was really interesting?
Well, there's all kinds. I mean, we've run across all kinds of things, right? Black widows. I just ran into a hornet's nest.
Oh, tell the hornet's nest story. That's a good one.
I mean, that was
at your house,
just
right?
one of those. That's just one of those things, folks. When you're, here's a quick tip for you. You're going out doing something in your yard. Make sure you know what's behind your bushes.
So
because
tell the story as you told me, John.
I was out there trimming hedges, and man, something was flying out of this hedge. And I was like, what is that? And then I said, oh boy, it's a hornet's nest. And I mean, these are hornets, not wasps. And these things are up for the attack. And I dropped that hedge trimmer, and it was still running. And I ran as fast as I could. And I saw one of them coming right at me, man. That thing hit me and just nailed me on my side. And I'm just getting over it now. But, man, these were these great big bald-faced black hornets. You can go look them up. And it was one of those great big nests the size of like a basketball.
Yeah, in your hedges, right?
In my hedges. Now, I've had them hanging from the tree, over my yard before. And, and they were way up there, so I couldn't do anything, and nor did I really want to disturb them, way up there. What all I could think about is riding my lawnmower around and that thing falling out of the tree onto my head.
No, it's even better. You're going to cut it with your hedge trimmers. Oy.
No. But this one was right in the hedges, and I was like, whoa. So that taught me a lesson. The other thing is, it goes along with the lessons learned. Always shake your shoes out. There might be a scorpion in there. If you keep them in the garage.
That's if you live here in the South, folks.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, you live. Hey, you live in Arizona,
maybe out west.
Where our folks or our friends down under, in Australia.
Yeah.
Sure, they got plenty of stories. They should send us some of their stories. They got interesting things down there that are crawling on stinging.
Yep.
But anyways, that's those are. I was just beat the other day. I was just beat, from doing all this work, from being, doing handyman stuff. And I thought, well, I'll just go out, and have a relaxing morning Saturday. And then this thing happens. I'm like, oh man, I can't win for losing here. So anyways.
All right. Well, folks, we're going to wrap it up. If you have any questions or comments, please send us an email. That's questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. You can join our Facebook group at Handyman Pros, or you can go to our website and leave us a voice message at handymanprosradioshow.com. Go up and click on that and drop us a thing. We hope you've enjoyed this little insight into what John and I do on basically a weekly and daily basis, and on some of the challenges and things that we face at the jobs. There's a million stories, folks. We could go on for hours and hours and hours, but we just we don't want to bore you is what it is. We think they're funny. We don't want it to be too inside baseball, so we're trying to keep it limited. But we wanted to give you a little bit of just a little bit of insight as to what happens in our world. So I don't know, John. I was looking up in the sky the other night. You know what I saw?
What did you see?
I saw this spaceship, John, and it came down and it landed right next to your house. Did you do something with it?
No, I was too tired. I fell asleep.
Oh, you left it for me to take it apart?
Well, that's after I took it apart.
Folks, we'll see you next week. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave us a review. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. And 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.